Welcome to a short overview of ClimateTimeMachine, Skiara's online climate time travel simulation. We are going to look at a climate time travel that has already advanced into the middle of the century. After entering the simulation, you see your living environment, currently a single-family house. At the top, there is the time bar which shows you the accelerated progression of simulated time. The simulation ends in 2100. On the house screen, you can do four main types of things. First, you should adjust your lifestyle setting to match your actual or a fictitious lifestyle. You do this once at the beginning of the simulation and then whenever you feel the need to, possibly prompted by developments in the simulated world. Second, you can vote on various political measures to influence systemic and industrial emissions. Third, you can inform yourself on the state of the simulated world in several different ways. And finally, fourth, you can communicate with other participants. You are not alone in this world. Let's start with adjusting the initial settings. You can find these in related locations in the house and its surroundings. These navigation points are currently being depicted by an exclamation mark in a red circle. You can turn the labels on and off here. There are lifestyle settings for your recycling habits, your diet, your electricity consumption, your mobility, your flights, your general consumption, your CO2 compensation, and your space heating. Just enter the values you know, use the estimation or leave the default value. The default values are usually the population average of your country of residence. While you are setting values, you can always see how the changes will affect your personal carbon footprint at the bottom of the screen. You can call up an overview of your footprint and its composition here. Click or tap on one of the sections to directly adjust your settings. ClimateTimeMachine goes far beyond a simple carbon footprint calculator, as the majority of emissions cannot be reduced to zero by individual decisions. They can only be changed by political decisions. That's what we have our polling feature for. Here you can find a list of political measures against climate change. You can vote on them anytime. The votes are tallied every couple of simulated years. The voting option with the most votes will take effect, with the resulting change in CO2 emissions, but also costs and other consequences. Here, you can see the results of former evaluations of this poll. Now let's have a look at the simulation's current climate, as caused by all the participants together. First, you might notice that the vegetation around your house does not look very healthy. The grass is yellow and some of the trees are wilting. This comes from too much heat and too little rain. If this goes on or gets even worse, the trees might die eventually. Another way to find out how climate change is affecting the world is the news channel. Here you can find news items on climate events in the world that are published when certain climate indicators reach critical values. Let's have a look at the numbers behind that, too. Click here to open a view of the Earth. On the left-hand side, you see some global climate indicators, generated by scientific models. The one on top is CO2 concentration in the air. This value was 280 parts per million before we seriously started to burn fossil fuels. This is the change of the global mean temperature compared to pre-industrial levels. The Paris Climate Accord sets the goal to limit this number to well below 2 degrees Celsius, or 1.5 degrees if at all possible. The treaty was signed and ratified by almost every country in the world. This is the sea level rise compared to the mid-1980s. Even just 50 centimeters of increase will threaten tens of millions of homes. 1 meter of sea level rise will displace hundreds of millions of people. On the right-hand side, you see local weather values. Of course, these are no forecast, but plausible values that are consistent with the global climate development in the simulation. Currently, the upper values are the ranges of the minimum and maximum day temperatures in the current month. The two lower values show the current month's number of dry and wet days. We plan to add many more local indicators. If you have provided your postcode, you can see these values for the region you are living in. Otherwise, numbers for your country of residence will be shown. In very large or mountainous countries, this will of course lead to wide ranges of numbers. Still, you will be able to see a trend in these numbers over time. There is another option to look at the development of the climate, here. You can call up a projection of future climate values. It shows the same indicators as the view for the current simulation time, just for the year 2100. It comes in two variants. The first one shows how the climate might develop if every person in the world would change their emissions by as many % as you do. So, if you reduced your simulated emissions by 5%, it assumes that everybody else on Earth, from Elon Musk to an African small farmer, would on average also do so by 5%. The second variant is very similar, but uses the average emissions change of you and all your fellow time travelers. Thus it is the more realistic projection as it takes other lifestyles into account, too. Now what do you want to do with all this information? You might want to adapt your lifestyle to your changing needs and values and to the changing world, so that you can enjoy your best possible life. But how would you do this? You can contemplate for yourself or use the chat feature to discuss with your fellow time travelers. Ask questions. Offer help. Share your observations of what's happening in your living environment. Team up with others to become more effective. Discuss the policy options that are up for voting. Convince others to join whatever initiative is important to you. And then, decide on your next action, implement it by adjusting your lifestyle settings and look at the consequences again. So much on the current features of ClimateTimeMachine. Thank you for your attention.